Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Breckland Council Planning for today. If I could just run through our general housekeeping. First of all, could I just remind you that the fire exits, there are two on this wall here. There's another one on the corridor where the lavatories are, and of course there's the entrance door where you entered. There is not a test down for today, so if we hear the alarm, we will treat it as genuine and vacate the building. And as I always say, if you're not sure where you're heading to, just follow this lot because they'll be out of the door first, because they're not the bravest of brave. Could I also ask you to switch your mobile phones or various devices, which is quite good, I don't think I've even done mine, to silent, because if they go off, then there is a system that you will be fined £10 for disturbing my meeting, and that goes to the charity of the chairman, and that's not the chairman of this committee, it's the chairman of the council, who is also my vice chairman, Councillor Wilkinson, and he will tell you, which he does all the time because I can never remember, which charities he is doing for his term of office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Merry Christmas to you and everybody in the room. My charities for this year is the very local. They're the Swaffham and Litcham Home Hospice and the Sands Baby Bereavement Society. And both I have worked with residents who've had the use of both of those charities, so very worthwhile. So don't listen to the chairman, leave your phone on and I'll come round later. Thank you.
Everybody loves a fundraiser. Good. Next procedure, what will happen is each item will be called. I have a list of people who have registered to speak. I'd ask you to come and sit on the right-hand side at the seats there. And the officer will give a presentation. I will then tell you when you are to speak, and also how much time that you have got to speak. You have a limited time. When your time is up, you will hear the bell. That doesn't mean your room is ready. It just means that I would like you to be quiet. But just sum up, and that sum up does not take 15 minutes. It means sum up briefly that sentence and you're done. Thank you very much. Introduction for the day on my left-hand side. He's here always. Thank goodness for that. Is Mike Horn, who is solicitor to the council. On my right-hand side, we have our local stock car driver, or at least she was last night when she decided to crash her car. And this Rebecca Collins. She is very fragile today, so I am going to protect her, so none of you can get angry with her today. So gird your loins, because I will be jumping over this desk in her protection. We have Chris Hobson, one of our senior planning officers, and our other planning officer here today is Matthew Blackie. I've done that right, haven't I? Yes, of course I am. And I'm trying to read my own writing, by the way. We'll be joined a little bit later by Barbara Greengrass. We also have in the room Becky Burton, who is our usher for today, and she is also one of our planning officers. And taking all the information down and keeping us in check is Julie Britton of Democratic Services. So I think that's all covered. So we will start with the minutes of the meeting. Oh, Councillor Kittle-Morris. Don't apologise, because not yet.
Chairman, you've forgotten the tradition that you always start the meetings, even in January.
Chairman's announcements.
Yes.
Gird your loins, I'm getting to it. All right. I know you need to know, because it's a need-to-know basis. Okay, I will get to it briefly. So first of all, minutes. Could I ask you to agree that I sign these minutes off? Agreed. Thank you very much. Let me just borrow your pen. I don't want to sign it in blood. Thank you. There we go, Julie. That's that bit done. That's all official. Item 2 is apologies and substitutes. Do we have any at all, Julie?
Thank you, Chairman. We just have one apology from Councillor Mike Brindle, and we have no substitutes in attendance.
Fine, thank you very much. Declarations of interest and representations received. I will take them as each item is raised. Chairman's announcements. First of all, February and March panel, we need confirmation, if possible, to Becky. We are short, I think, of the odd member. So if, sorry? That's a long way off as well, February and March next year. No, it's going to be here soon. So if you think you can make it, have a chat with Becky if need be, and we would like the odd members, please. And for all of you, yes, it is 6 sleeps to go. Right, 6 sleeps to Christmas, okay? And I will take this opportunity to wish you all a very Merry Christmas within my announcements. And we will do planning first, and then, in the words of Sir Noddy Holder, it's Christmas, but not yet. So that's my announcements. I've got nothing really to add to that. So item 5, we will do a request to defer applications. Do we have any?
No.
We do not. Do we have item 6, any urgent business?
None today.
None today. Item 7, local plan update. Do you feel like doing one? Good.
I'll do my best. So from the policy team, the update states, following the approval of the local plan development options report by Cabinet in November and an all-member briefing last week, some changes to the report are being considered and agreed prior to publication. These include exploring the possibility of the allocation of sites for new development across a larger number of parishes in the district. This has resulted in a short delay to the beginning of the public consultation until early January 2024. All of the documents will be available on the Commonplace platform and signposted from the Breckland Council website. The 2-week delay to the beginning of the consultation means that the consultation over the Christmas holiday period will now be avoided, but it will not affect the overall timetable for the preparation of the plan. Public consultation on the design guide will also be undertaken. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Nobody got any questions? Good. So we'll move on to, sorry guys, I've got paperwork everywhere. Our deferred applications, and we have one on Yaxham, which is application 3OB 2023 0039 VOB, and I have 4 speakers for this. So if I could ask you to come on to the right-hand side, and that's Graham Howe of Yaxham Parish Council, Kai Gibbon, who's the agent, Jay Mehta, who's a solicitor for Howe's Percival, and Councillor Paul Plummer. I gather you're going to cross the floor. Okay. Over to you, please, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chairman. So members will recall on the planning committee meeting of I put Tuesday the 13th of January. No. Tuesday the 31st of October, couldn't have been further out. On the committee meeting of Tuesday the 31st of October, we heard this item for a variation of planning obligation for affordable housing to reduce the percentage of affordable housing from 40% to 25% in line with the current adopted policy in the local plan. Members heard that item. Officers presented it on the basis that the reduction to 25%, the 25% is in line with your current planning policy. At the time the original outline planning permission was granted, that was the policy at that time, and the application accorded with the policy at that time, which was 40%. You'll note from the officer report that the housing officer has no objections, providing that that 40% wasn't overriding in making a decision on that original planning application. You'll also note from the officer report that the officers do not consider that matter to be overriding, as it was policy compliant at the time of approval of the outline planning consent. You'll also note from the officer report that we have comments from the Parish Council and the CPRE, as well as 12 objections from local residents about the reduction of affordable housing, and those matters are set out in the officer report. At the Planning Committee on the Tuesday the 31st of October, the item was deferred by members on the grounds of they were concerned about a matter that was raised in the supporting statement to the appeal. So the outline planning application was approved, and that the history is set out in the report, and that had with it a Section 106 agreement that required the delivery of 40% affordable housing. That application was approved, and later a reserved matters application was submitted for matters of landscape, layout, appearance and scale. That application was assessed and refused planning permission, at which point the applicants appealed that application, and it was heard by an inspector at an appeal. At that appeal, the inspector approved planning permission, and we did discuss this at the last committee, members. However, it was raised that within the appellant's appeal statement to the inspector, they made reference to 40% affordable housing being delivered as part of the development. This was raised at the previous committee, and we deferred the item on this basis. Since that previous committee, the applicants have submitted further information in that regard, specifically with regards to the matter of the reference to 40% affordable housing in their appeal statement. In the matters which are referred to in the deferred section of the officer report, they outlined 3 aspects which related to that reference in the appeal statement. The first matter was with regards to it being a factual matter. So at the time of the appeal, there factually was a requirement for 40% affordable housing within the Section 106 agreement, and there was no intention at that time to change that requirement. With regards to the second matter raised in the deferred section of your report and the reason for that reference, that was having regard to the fact that the inspector had no regard to the fact that 40% affordable housing was a consideration in the appeal, and that was because that was a reserved matters appeal. So in a reserved matters appeal, the inspector cannot revisit the principle of development, and he cannot revisit the Section 106 agreement. He can only look at the matters which are reserved for that application, which in this instance were appearance, landscape, layout and scale. And you'll note that from the appeal decision letter that only makes reference to the 40% in the description of the development. It doesn't analyse that in the appeal whatsoever. And obviously the inspector could not take that into consideration in his determination of the appeal because it doesn't relate to appearance, layout, landscape and scale. Finally, you'll note from the deferred section of the officer report, the applicants have made an effort to submit some viability information, which demonstrates that now the delivery of 40% affordable housing on this site would render the development unviable, and that is set out in some detail in the report and in their submission information. You'll also note from the report, with regards to my comments, that information has not been independently assessed by our independent inspector. That's for 2 reasons. One, because policy House 7 of the local plan and paragraph 58 of the MPPF, it doesn't require an open book analysis of viability when the affordable housing contribution is policy compliant. And work back to where I started, the 25% is policy compliant with your current housing policy, policy House 7 in the local plan. So on that basis, we consider that the information submitted by the appellant aligns with the officer's initial recommendation, was that the 40% affordable housing wasn't overriding at the time of granting outline planning permission. It was not an overriding reason for granting planning permission. It was merely a policy compliant decision at that time. As the policies have changed, we consider that a reduction of 40% affordable housing to 25% housing in this instance is acceptable, and we've recommended this one for approval. I'm just have one more slide. Apologies, pop-ups. So this is just the location plan for members that we showed you at the last committee, just to show you the location of the site. But in terms of the location of the site and the other applications which are listed in the report, there will be no material change, only the reduction of the affordable housing in the Section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I've got Graham Howe, please, of Yaxham Parish Council. I gather you're a councillor?
Yes, I am.
Councillor, that's fine, thank you. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Good morning and happy Christmas. My name's Graham Howe. I'm a parish councillor for Yaxham, and in my former life, as I'm now retired, I was managing director of Hill Partnerships and Kier Construction, both fairly sizable construction companies. We of the parish council are opposed to the reduction of affordable homes by flagship on this site, and I'm not going to rally on for our reasons, but they are recorded and summarised in our response, which has been posted on the 2nd of October. The affordable housing allocation to this planning application was the only real benefit that this development will bring to our community. We have read the responses returned by Flagship to this application in detail, and we are somewhat confused by the financial values posted by Flagship via Watson's letter in their response dated the 22nd of November, which is still modelled on the provision of 40% affordable housing, but I guess this is by some way of providing a comparison. We note Flagship's comments at the Planning Committee meeting of the 31st of October, which is repeated in their letter dated the 4th of December, which states, Flagship Group's purpose is to deliver affordable housing, and Flagship Housing Developments will endeavour, using options available to us, to increase the affordable housing on this scheme back to 40% as the scheme progresses. We would really welcome this, and we seek confirmation from Flagship that the houses in question will retain affordable housing specifications, or are they one and the same as those that are for housing for sale? On the basis that this application is approved, we request that a condition is inserted that the density, scale and mix of housing types on this application cannot be changed by future applications, so that the above statement of going back to 40% affordable remains realistic and an achievable goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Kai Gibbon, who is the agent. You have 1.5 minutes, sir. You're wishing to speak? Yes. Yes. Okay.
Thank you, members. My name is Kai Gibbon. I'm a project manager for Flagship Housing Developments, which is a part of Flagship Group. We are a registered provider that own over 32,000 homes across the east of England. We build homes, let, improve and maintain them. Our programme, totalling 730 homes, including pipeline in Breckland, demonstrates our pivotal role as well as ability and desire to deliver good quality affordable homes in the district, making a difference for our tenants and their communities. This site needs to be delivered to meet local housing need, but for the reasons previously outlined to members within this application, it is essential that policy compliant 25% affordable housing is provided. Flagship's ambition, given who we are, is to deliver more homes, but a 25% minimum of affordable housing in accordance with the current local plan needs to be secured to enable this scheme to progress. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've got Jay Mehta, who's the solicitor, and you have 1.5 minutes, sir. And by the way, good to see you. Thank you.
Hello, good morning all members, Merry Christmas. I'm only going to emphasise 4 or 5 points, I think, arising from the very comprehensive officer's report, which of course the appellant the applicant fully endorses. The principle of development here is absolutely agreed. All of the density, all of the plans are agreed. We are only talking about the delivery of affordable housing. Of course, 40% affordable housing wasn't critical, as members have heard, to the original decision. That reflected policy position at the time. The policy requirement is now 25%. There has been a huge number, or at least a good number, of other schemes, other Section 106 agreements where this council and members have approved a reduction of 25% affordable housing too, because of course that reflects the current policy requirements. There must absolutely be, in my mind at least, consistency in decision making flagship site, this proposal is absolutely no different to any of the other sites or schemes where planning permission has previously been granted under a policy context of 40%, whereas now, of course, we have the policy context, as officers have explained, of 25%. Unfortunately, if this application isn't approved, I fear that may only leave one option, and that could be the resubmission of a planning application. Of course, a resubmission of a planning application would delay significantly the delivery of new homes that are well needed on a site, of course, that is already within the settlement boundary of Yaxham. And of course, that new application would have to provide 25% affordable housing in any event, because 25% is currently policy compliant. So I've got little other to add other than fully endorse the officer's report, and please do approve this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Plummer, you have 3 minutes as well, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a complete stitch-up as usual. Well, if you look at all these figures and everything, and I mean, the case officer is going to put in all these other 25%, which we're always told you're not supposed to compare one to another. If you want to compare one to another, we've got an application today coming in from Shibden with 100% affordable homes and shared ownership. Now, some companies can do it by the looks of it, but for some reason Flagship doesn't want to do this. They promised 40%, all right. They're trying to say, well, that was policy at the time, so now we're not going to, we want the new policy. But what we're doing is we're opening an awful can of worms here, because if I look down to what the case offer has put, there is one here that's 10% affordable. Well, all these others that are 25 can come back to us and say, well, we can't afford to build these, so we want 10%. We're really getting ourselves on a very bad way of doing planning here. If you're going to say you're going to build 40%, then that's what you should be doing. Not then start arguing the point that all policy has changed, so what we'll do is and then we've had the threat of now we're going to put another planning application in. If you don't pass this, we're going to put another plan, which is a threat. Now, I don't know about anybody else on this planning committee, but I'm fed up with these developers and people coming here, promising us they're going to build affordables and then turn around and say, oh, we can't afford them. No, of course we can't. We can't afford them. So let's see. Last year, Flagship made a profit of £67 million. 50 directors shared £4.6 million, and the chief executive was paid £296,000. Oh, we can't afford to build them houses, them affordable houses, because we haven't got the money. Well, I should think if they're making that sort of money and they're paying their executives £4.6 million profit out of the profits, I think they could afford to build these houses. I'm very disappointed. I think most people in the villages are disappointed, and I should think most of this planning committee are disappointed, because what Breckland are always trying to do is house people who haven't got homes. And here we are losing another load of affordable homes. I think it's a bad way of doing it. I think our policies are wrong, and I don't think this should be passed. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. Okay, it's open to questions from members. Do any members have any questions to ask? Councillor Bambridge.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Right, I can sort of understand in a way where you're coming from, and I do sort of agree with you, but I just want to ask a question specific for Flagship. You are a social housing provider, and you were building social houses in Breckland. You're now reducing them, and what I want to ask, what sort of houses are you building when you get into the 75%, beyond the 25%? Are you building market houses? And is that a new job for you, or are they going to be some other form of affordable houses, which Breckland, of course, is in great need of?
You can answer if you wish.
Sorry, I apologise. I know that's not really a plan.
Yeah, our houses that we build, obviously the application, the standard house types that have already been approved, we would seek to build those out, and they would be tenure blind, so you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell the difference between an open market home and an affordable home. So they would be suitable for any tenant or buyer, irrespective of where they're going to be renting or purchasing that property.
Yeah, I'm not sure that really answers my question. And my question probably ought to have been asked in another forum, so I apologise. But I really am concerned when we have a social housing provider, which Flagship is, I mean, my background is more in housing than planning anyway, and I'm really concerned that Flagship Housing, a social housing provider, is reducing the number of affordable housing on it, although with the current situation I can sort of understand it. But I'm just wondering where you're going to on this.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Mike Horn just to give you a little bit of a direction, because I think Councillor Plummer's done a terrific job of leading us all up the garden path slightly.
A simple message. Can I please urge members of this committee to consider planning considerations and planning policy when they reach their decision, and none of these other issues are relevant.
Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think, as I recall it, that the application was deferred on the letter from Howes Percival that supported the appeal inspection, and I think the first 4 pages of the officer's report actually make it quite clear that that letter was nothing to do, and it didn't support the 40%. And so the inspector did not have in his mind what level of affordable housing was on that site. Now, while I appreciate that at the moment we are in a situation where building supplies and bricks and timber have gone up disproportionate to everything, and it makes it very difficult for people to build houses in the first place, and they're very expensive. I think it's a shame that we're going to have to look at things like this, but as the gentleman, the solicitor across the other side said, he could put another application in with 25% on, and that would be sail through, and you would have no problem with it. It's a great shame that we have to look at applications like this, but I do support the officer's recommendation. However, a couple of questions. One is, don't cover that up. There's a typo in one of the things that said that the local plan was adopted in September 2023, which it wasn't. But on a question of viability, why is the provision of rented property a strain on viability? Now, I can understand that viability questions come up with the cost of construction, the cost of labour, the cost of diesel fuel rather than red diesel and all the rest of it used on site. But why is that particular thing? It does say in one of the paragraphs that it is a strain on viability, and I'd like to know why, just for my information. Thank you.
Even better still. I've just asked Rebecca if she'd like to answer. She said no. They can answer that one. How's that? This is how cruel she is today. You've wound her up the wrong way.
That's okay. Thank you for your question. Essentially, the viability is improved by selling more houses, which are used then to plough the profits back into building more houses or making the site itself more affordable or more viable, which is where we are with this application. By providing 25% affordable housing, our profits on the scheme increase because we're selling more houses.
Yes, please do.
You're saying that they're all rented on this. So if they were a different mix of affordable housing, sort of partly owned, partly rented, would that make the viability better, or is it the fact that they are rented rather than affordable housing rather than any other mix of affordable housing makes it less viable or more viable.
The application is the application before us. We can't assume what may...
I appreciate that, Chairman. I'm trying to find out why. I know that rented properties decrease the viability.
Yeah.
But if you put different mix of affordable housing, I'm trying to sort out in my own mind exactly where we're coming from with different mixes of affordable housing.
But I don't want
to how that
I don't want to stray from the
viability.
application. I don't want to stray from the application that's before us, and I don't want to put the applicant in a position where he's quoting offhand. I know where you're trying to go for clarity, but I don't think we can do it at the moment. Mr. Horn, would you like to come in at all, or are you happy now? No, you're not happy.
I think that is a perfectly reasonable question for information purposes, but since viability actually is not something, or unviability is not something that the applicant needs to prove here, it is actually irrelevant, but there is no reason why, for the purposes of clarity, for future viability assessments, there can't be an answer to that question. But I would emphasise, for the purposes of this application, the applicant does not need to prove an unviability at 40%.
Okay, we're going to leave it at that. Councillor Attwell, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. What a mess, to be honest. I'm not happy about this reduction from 40 to 25%. If I'm honest, I think you knew what you were doing when you put in the 40% figure and made that reference in your letter to the appeals inspector, but that's done and dusted. I don't see we've got any other choice but to actually pass this on purely planning policy terms, because I don't think that we would be able to defend it at appeal, which is going to cost to the council. And as you've already said, the application could be refused, and then they just put in a new application for the 25% anyway. So it's a wholly unsatisfactory state of affairs. I'm not happy about it. I question the business model, and that's not part of the application. You are a social housing provider. It seems to me like you're now going into more of the mainstream market as general developers. But on this application, I don't see that we've got any other choice but to approve this. But that does, that does really rankle with me. I can't see any other, it's a comment, it's not a question. I can't see we've got any other choice in policy terms, and what you're saying about a possible new application. And I hear what Councillor Plummer says, and, I agree with him. But I think we're going to have to pass this. I think the hands are tied. Sorry.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I think all I can do is express say my disappointment, but not surprised that we've got this position before us today. I agree with Councillor Attwell completely, and also with the sentiments of Councillor Plummer, although that's obviously for another venue. Yes, obviously when the applications are submitted, they were presumably viable at the time, and obviously, as Councillor Attwell has said, going forward, whether any appeal or subsequent applications, we would be back to where we are now, so we wouldn't actually gain anything. So we don't have any actual alternative. But I'd like to record my disappointment, like some other councillors. I've got a number of flagship properties in my ward and others, and it's this disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I hear where you're coming from. Okay, and sorry, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chairman. If you'll indulge me, I've just heard two statements without a question, and I'd just like to say, for new members' benefit, back in 2016, I think it was 2016, I was a part of the steering group who've looked at the 40%. It was hindering sites coming forward. It wasn't a realistic figure then, let alone now with the expenses, what we've just heard about materials going up. And so we brought that down to 25%. And since then, our land supply, which we were struggling to get 5-year land supply, is we've now got the 5-year land supply because we reduced that 40% to 25. And as you've heard, Flagship are a social housing provider, and this is 25% of social housing, not because there's a different thing with affordable. It's social housing we're going to get 25% of, and that is the main point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No further questions. I'm going to go to the vote on this item. So with regards to Yaxham, it's 3OB 2023-0039 VOB. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? And those against? No. Okay. Oh, did we have an abstention?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realise. Sorry, and an abstention. Okay. Right, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. Thank you. We're now moving on to... Oh, he picked his amendments. We're going to get ready to do Harling, which is 3PL 2022-1417. I've got Mr. Philip Cowan, who is the agent, and Victoria Freeman, who is the applicant, for questions only. Yes, please come and sit down.
What is wrong with the mics?
Looking very sparkly today. Christmas sparkly. Christmas sparkly. And you know, I know, well, didn't bother. Now I'm just looking at the shirt. It's a bit William Nunn.
He's learned a lot from me in his time.
Okay, we're just waiting for a planning officer who's gone to sort out some filing, and he'll be briefly with us. So we talk amongst yourselves. Okay, thank you. Over to you, please, then, Matthew.
All right, so good morning, everyone. So this is a planning application. The reference is 3PL 2022-1417/F, and this is located in the parish of East Harland, and it will be in the village of East Harland. This is Pear Tree Cottage on Garbaldisham Road, and this is for the demolition of an existing dwelling. Okay, and so this is for the demolition of an existing dwelling with the replacement of a new 2-storey dwelling and also associated works. And just to note that the planning application has been brought to planning committee on the request of chairman's panel. Okay, so as you can see, this is the location plan. So you've got the site here in red. So this is Pear Tree Cottage. So this is the existing dwelling, and then this is a detached garage at the rear, and it's semi-detached with the neighbouring property, the Last Straw. And then, as you can see, it's also situated in an area of residential dwellings. And then this just gives you a further site and wider context. And just to note that this is the centre of East Harland here, so it just shows the proximity to the main centre. Okay, so this is the proposed site plan. So as you can see, this is just to show the existing dwelling, which is situated here. and then this is the rear. The parking is going to be situated here, and the existing garage is going to be retained as part of the development, and the main access for the dwelling comes off Garbaldersham Road here, which is shared with other properties within the vicinity. And so here are the proposed elevations. So this is going to be the proposed dwelling here. This is it looking at it from the south elevation as you come through the access. This is the proposed rear elevation, and then this is looking at it from the neighbouring property perspective. And as you can see, here are the proposed floor plans. So you've got the main communal living areas on the ground floor, and then you've got the garden situated here. And then, as you can see, this is the first floor. So you've got 3 bedrooms that are proposed. And then these are just the proposed section plans. Okay, so just to get into some, just to give some background to the application. So this is the existing dwelling here. So just to note that the property itself is not listed, and it's not also situated within a conservation area. So it's not formally designated within any heritage. It doesn't have any heritage protection as such. However, as you can see from the property's aesthetic, it's got a thatched roof, and it also has many traditional features. So given the aesthetic of the property, the Historic Buildings Officer for Breckland Council was consulted, and they did confirm that they held concern regarding the loss of the building. So for them, they considered that the building had heritage value, and so after an assessment against the Historic England's local listing criteria, as officers, we did consider that the property was worthy to be considered a non-designated heritage asset. So non-designated heritage assets are where they have protection under the National Planning Policy Framework, and it's where local authorities can govern a local list to protect these properties or buildings where they consider there to be heritage value. So your local plan policy, EMV08, restricts the demolition of non-designated heritage assets, subject to demonstrating that it's no longer either viable or structurally sound to retain the building. So after extensive engagement with both the applicant and the agent, we do consider that the property is suitable for demolition for the following purposes. So a structural survey was submitted in support of the application, and after an internal site visit with the agent, it was concluded that there was severe structural soundness with the property, and this deteriorated during the application process as well. And also it was considered that the cost of the restoration of the building would be too substantial. So for these reasons, it is with regret that we will be we are supporting the demolition of the building. And so we consider that any replacement dwelling would have to be sympathetic to the original building itself, and to ensure that it retained the features and the characters and the features of the property that is being lost. So we did have the original scheme we did raise objection to, as we considered that the replacement dwelling was considered not to be acceptable. So your local plan policy, HOU 11, relates to replacement dwellings within the district, and it states that any replacement dwelling has to be sympathetic in design in terms of its scale, height and appearance. The original design dwelling we considered to be too excessive in terms of its mass and bulk on the street frontage, and for this reasons it was considered not to be acceptable. And also furthermore, we considered that it did not have the features of the original property itself. There was 3 dormer windows that were proposed, which we considered not to be acceptable as well. So following further discussions with the scheme, we have since received a revised scheme, which you've been shown in the plans themselves. We consider that the revised scheme is more acceptable. So the ridge line is going to be matching that of the neighbouring property, which is semi-detached. We've had the removal of a dormer window from the front, and so we're now going to have 2 dormer windows, which is replicating the current property in its current form. And furthermore, we consider that the overall mass and bulk at the street frontage is much more acceptable, and it's much more in keeping with not just the original property that you can see here, but it's also going to be more sympathetic to the other properties within the immediate area. So as you can see, this is the current property looking at it from Gulbaldersham Road, and this is the access. This is it looking at it towards the rear, and as you can see, this is the neighbouring dwelling there. And then this is looking at it from the rear of the garden, and as you can see, there's another neighbouring dwelling. And then the next couple of pictures just demonstrate the current condition of the property at the time of the visit, and it's just to note that the property condition has deteriorated during the application process. So this is just to show some of the internal, just how to show how the property looks internally at the moment. Just another picture. And then this is just the final picture. This is on the ground floor. So as set out in the officer report, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. No objections have been raised by the parish council, neighbouring dwellings or neighbours, ecology and also highways. And it should also be noted, as this is a replacement dwelling, is neither caught by nutrient neutrality, and no GRMs is required given the fact that it's not creating additional overnight stay within the district. Thank you.
Before you finish, do you just want to quickly show the design again?
Yeah.
Just show the dwelling a lot. Just quickly.
There you go. And just to show what the proposed dwelling will be looking like.
Matthew, could you just, before I move on to the speakers, could you just clarify for members the floating aspect of the neighbouring property?
Is that something that the agent gets out?
Yes, fine. I'll leave it to the agent. He may wish to. I just want members to be clarified that there's a lot of detail gone into this application. Okay, it's over to you then, Mr. Cowan. 3 minutes, sir.
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks for that, Matthew. The last point that you just heard the Chairman discussing there relates to a flying freehold. And as you look at that plan that's up before, that's now disappeared. Ooh, there we go. So as you look at that elevation, the main elevation to the street frontage, you'll see two dormer windows to this particular cottage there, and immediately to the one side there that's it. That's the neighbouring property. That's a flying freehold. The first floor of neighbouring properties oversails the ground floor of Pear Tree Cottage, which gives it quite a challenge for anyone to work with. And as a result of that, the plan that you've seen before you has been modified to ensure that we can, A, support the neighbouring property, provide it with a substantial and weather-tight enclosure. The roof of the existing cottage, as you've seen from the thatch, oversails that bedroom, and that bedroom is leaking quite considerably. The deterioration that Matthew mentioned is pertinent, but it's also important to recognise when my client purchased this property, it was in that state anyway. And over the last number of months, we've been working both with my client and also with the team here at Breckland to develop a scheme which they feel is acceptable. There is no doubt the existing house itself, Pear Tree Cottage, has been adjusted and altered over time. The central chimney classic problem was inserted at some point in its history. Ground floor headroom is about 1.5 metres. The first floor headroom is not much more than that. And in fact, the eaves are very, very low. So when we started this journey with the planners, we had anticipated replicating the footprint of the existing cottage, but that required us to do some work in the roof to increase the headroom upstairs and downstairs, and it was that which pushed the ridgeline considerably higher than planners were prepared to accept. As a result of that, the scheme that you have before you has been developed, which increases the footprint in terms of depth front to back, but that enables us to create more headroom in the property as a consequence. Apart from that, the access is somewhat restricted because it's a non-adopted access to the side, and that gives us access to parking spaces and the existing garage at the rear. There's not a lot more to add, frankly, members. It is a scheme which meets its purposes. It replaces a building which is in desperate state of replacement. It's been looking like that for many years, and those of you who know Harling will probably appreciate that. But most importantly, for my client, it's essential that we get this project underway to ensure that the neighbouring property, known as the Last Straw, which, by the way, was constructed significantly after this cottage, which is a few hundred years old. Last Straw, barely 50. I'd urge you to support the officer's recommendation. And my client is here if you have any questions to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Open to questions. Councillor Attwell.
Question for the agent, if I can. Could you just bring the street plan up, please, so I can see the elevation? Yeah. Could you just help me understand, am I right in saying then, because you've got 3 dormer windows there, and one is much lower than the 2 on the right, is it because the floor levels are different?
No, not at all. If I can just, this is the boundary of the property on the ground floor. So this is Pear Tree Cottage.
Yeah.
That is Pear Tree Cottage on the first floor.
Right.
This belongs to this one here, which is the Last Straw.
So was there no way of getting the dormers on the new bit to line up with the one on this existing?
No, there isn't, because the Last Straw actually has reduced their ground floor level.
That's what I'm asking, yeah. Okay, thank you, I understand.
Good, thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Plummer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I agree with the agent. I'm involved at the moment with 2 houses that need total renovation. The first one, the clients decided to knock down and build a brand new, and the second one decided to renovate, and I can quite assure you it is costing an arm and a leg to renovate, and this one would as well. So I agree with the agent. Thank you.
Councillor Kybird.
Just for clarification, the wall finishes are render to the matching section and then brick to the rear extension?
It's a mixture of materials. Mixture of materials. On the major elevation that you look there, we're looking at render, and it's actually a lime render to match in with the adjacent property. We've got timber cladding as you go around the side on the rear there with the single story element, and we also have render above.
Thank you. Councillor Bambridge, please.
Well, just Chairman, I think knocking this down and replacement is something which I am going to vote for, but only just. I think these particular cottages are so iconic for this area that we should be protecting them as far as we can. But I do accept that what the agent and the officers have said, that this one possibly is beyond compare, although I've seen worse recovered.
I think, if we're perfectly honest, I think this particular cottage was going wrong a lot of years back, and has not been allowed to get how it is. But I think it was heading that way anyway, and it can't be stopped. Okay, members, I'm going to take the vote if there's no more questions. So, with regards to this item at East Harling or Harling, 3PL 2022-1417, it's in a full format. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Can I show of hands, please? That's unanimous. That's approved. Thank you very much. It's just gone 10 to 11. I'm going to be a little bit early. We're going to start just after 11. We're going to start back. We're going to have a 10-minute rest break, coffee and mince pies, and we will resume just after 11 with Shibdom. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, could I just ask you all to leave the room at present? We have a carbon monoxide alarm going off and we don't want to just think it's faulty. We are going to treat it as genuine, so if we could clear the room, please. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. For those online, I do apologise for the slight delay, but we had an issue with the ventilation system, so we had to clear the room. But we will continue, and our next application is at Shibden, 3PL 2022-1046F. And speakers for this one, I have the chairman of the parish, written statement, sorry. John Jennings on behalf of the applicant, and Councillor Paul Hewitt, written statement. Okay, so we've got John Jennings and Lisa Upton. Are you speaking or answering questions? Right, Lisa Upton. Okay, that's fine. Over to you then, please, Chris.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning. So just before we go into it, obviously this is item 19, Shipton, land north of Chapel Street. We've actually got a couple of things to highlight to you. The supplementary report's got comments from Councillor Linda Turner, and there's also been some late statements submitted. So I'll just summarise the parish councils. They're not able to attend due to illness, but in terms of we've also got a statement from Councillor Paul Hewitt. So I'm just going to read that through before we go into the presentation. So, Chairman, members, I'm sorry that I'm unable to attend this meeting in person due to work commitments. I note the case officer's recommendation to approve this application and wish to add my comments in support of that. The community of Shipton has never been backward when it comes to innovation, and this application is no exception. As a key service centre village, it has seen growth recently, but there is an acknowledged shortage of affordable homes. This application offers an opportunity to build the homes that our community needs, smaller, affordable homes in the heart of the village. In this regard, like my colleague, Councillor Linda Turner, I would be keen to ensure that the ambition for 100% affordable housing provision, split tenure of affordable rent and shared ownership is delivered as planned, with no further amendments to reduce the percentage downwards from 100% as proposed. I'm aware of the challenges that this may present in light of impacts of nutrient neutrality costs, and believe that we as a district should work tirelessly and aggressively to ensure that the valid exceptions are made within our nutrient neutrality mitigation strategy. Apologies. To ensure that this application, such as this, with a clear focus on meeting a community need, can be delivered as affordable as feasible. I fully support and endorse the efforts of our team in this regard. As a location, this is a reasonably small site in the middle of the busy village, which requires creative thinking in terms of providing necessary play provision and resulting in a Section 106 agreement. The village has an extensive and well-used play space to the south, a short distance away, complete with parking facilities, facilities for all ages and abilities, and it is planned to extend further over the next few years. As a result, the Parish Council has stated that any Section 106 contributions be ring-fenced and used to provide extended play and open space at the park, which I fully support. I urge all members to fully support the application, ensure affordable homes can be built in the right location and children of absolutely all ages can play safely in the right spaces. In terms of the comments from the Parish Council, they echo those. So just in summary, we note the case officer's recommendation to approve the application and wish to add our comments in respect and representation in support of that approval. Shipton has seen moderate growth in recent years. As a close-knit community, there continues to be a shortage of affordable homes for adult children and families within the village who wish to remain within it and to purchase and to move into. The Parish Council are keen to ensure that the current plan provision of 100% affordable housing is delivered as planned, with no changes to reduce the percentage. We are aware of the challenges in relation to costs from neutrality. The village has an extensive and well-used play space a short distance away, and we have plans underway to extend and develop this further. It gets used by local groups, football teams, scouts, martial arts groups and other groups. The Parish Council has requested that any Section 106 contribution be ring-fenced to be used to provide extended play and open space at the park. We urge all members to support this application, ensuring affordable homes can be built in the right location and ensure that families grow in the village they are brought up in, and people of all ages can enjoy the improved facilities. So just going on to the presentation application itself. So you'll have gathered from the main report pack, it's an affordable housing scheme for 102 homes, split tenure of affordable rent and shared ownership. So just I'll introduce the site. I think a lot of the members may recall this site. It's been around for a number of years in different guises. So we're looking at the site edge red here. So it's actually the sits due north of the former Wagon and Horses pub, which has now been removed from the site. So down here we've got the garage also has been removed, and the access has been provided at present. We'll see photos in a moment. So in terms of the site in more detail, so that shows it in relation to the settlement boundary of Shipton, shown by the red edge. So you'll see there it's within the centre of the village that extends east and west. There's the site there. The purple is the allocated housing site, which sits just to the north and east. Chapel Street runs due south of the site. And the orange shows a residential commitment in the taken into account in the strategy and plan for growth in Shipton. And that permission is extant for 90 homes. So just moving on, just to give you a further update of the site itself. Chapel Street again running to the south. You see the access which is built. Open fields due north and west. The actual surgery sits just southwest of the site. Residential site sits also opposite to the south of Chapel Street. Residential generally along the frontage here. The convenience store sits just here. And that's just a bit of a closer image. You can see the residential properties along Chapel Street here. So generally 2 stories along here. There are single story here, going up to 2 stories as we move further east. And just to reflect on that, so we can see the site just sits beyond here. The single story property here, 2 stories as we head further east. Then that's that view continuing here as we head further eastwards on the A1075, give you an idea of the built form. And that's the opposite side as we look at the site access due west of the site, so 2-story again, give you an idea of the character of the street scene. So as mentioned, the site access off Chapel Street, which is behind us, is already completed and in. Permission was granted and they've implemented that consent for 8 homes here, again affordable single bed units. So the site sits beyond here, beyond the fencing here. I'll touch on some of the extant permissions for the rest of the site in a moment. So just in terms of the site, so this is the view back towards Chapel Street here. We can see the construction here of those dwellings. So generally flat site, and the properties along Chapel Street here to the east. And you can see the extent of the site shown by the Harris fencing. So that's the view eastwards. And that's the northern boundary here, so mature trees and hedgerows on the northern boundary. Again, on the western boundary, and leylandis here that cut into the site and will need to be removed to make way for the proposed development. Oh, apologies. Skip through that. That's a view southwards towards, sorry, no, that's the west boundary here. There's the leylandi again, so houses sit just beyond here, and the surgery approximately here. Yeah, so I touched on some of the previous permissions. So this site, obviously the land edge blue here, but this shows the 90 homes that was previously granted here. As you see, we've got this site here, which, as we see, there's homes built here. Then there's also permission for a convenience store. Then there's a mixed-use development here of dog parlour, hot food takeaway, office space, and retention of a garage facility here. And members may recall a application was dismissed at appeal for removal of those and further houses in this location. So there's that consent here. I mentioned the garage, mixed use here, the convenience store, and those homes that have been built. As we saw, access into the site here. So yeah, just run through the proposals for you. So yeah, there's the existing access. So we'll see 102 homes here. We'll see we've got the estate road running around the edge, and Muse is created in the middle. And in relation to the general layout, we'll clearly see the open space. We've got surface water drainage features down here, pumping station, children's play area here, and further such features here, and a community orchard in the northwest corner. So the dwellings themselves, as mentioned, generally 2 stories. There are some 2.5 stories located along here and here. In terms of the mix, you'll see from the report there's a mix of 2, 3 and 4 beds, so 32 2 beds, 42 3 beds, and 28 4 beds. Just go through some of the house types for you. So this is a 2-bed, 2-bedroom home, generally conventional in character and appearance. Here we've got a further 2-bed. The design's been updated through the application in terms of layout and appearance, just to create some additional traditional features and ensure we've got overlooking to sides and features, you know, in the side flank walls where they do front open space and roads, etc. Again, an example of a 3-bed, so again, some traditional features added, bay windows, etc. We'll go into kind of the materials again in more detail in a minute. So that's the example of the 2.5 story. Then we've got those windows added to the side gables. And then 4-bed semi, again 2 stories. So all following a common theme. Here we've got a detached 4-bed, so we've got a change in material at first floor, hanging tiles, but generally taking a similar kind of approach in character and appearance. So some illustrative views created on behalf of the applicants to give you a flavour of the kind of approach they've been taking to this. So landscaping has been key in terms of the design approach, incorporating hedgerows to frontages and street trees, which again I'll refer to in the plan in more detail in a moment. So that's the kind of more kind of confined mews in the centre of the site, so there's 2 of those. Again, the view as you enter the site, so the play area here, open space, and that kind of frontage here. And again, that's the orchard, so northwest corner view to the houses here. So we've got a collection of 4 terrace properties fronting that corner orchard here and here. So just in terms of materials, generally a conventional approach, kind of mainly use of brick. So there's a general mixture of approaches there. So see the use of grey, but also red clay pan tiles, red brick, and those clay hanging tiles here. So yeah, and then there's those examples of materials. So they're kind of reflecting a kind of traditional approach in terms of the fenestration, doors and windows. So yeah, I mentioned landscaping. That's been key to the design approach the applicants and their architects have taken. So street trees along the frontage here, those hedgerows along the frontage as well, kind of continue around the corners here. So additional tree planting all the way around here as you enter the site from the south. And there's the example there. So you've got the orchard at the top, hedgerows again continuing through the site. So touching on kind of drainage, so there we can see the suds features here. So there's a wet attenuation pond here, so that will take the surface water from the site. And there's a dry pond here in this south-eastern corner of the site, all connected here. So the proposals seek to discharge the existing ditch network at this point at a discharge controlled rate to reflect the greenfield runoff rate here. So again, I'll just go back to that main site plan slide. Yeah, you'll see from the kind of report, the consultations, etc., the parish council are in support of the application. We have received objections from the local community, 7 objections. But as you'll see from the report, in terms of the matters of infrastructure, impact on highways, the character and density issues, impact on street scene, those have been considered within the report, and we can talk on those in more detail. So when we look at the kind of principles, as mentioned, this sits in the settlement boundary, so it's where we want to see new housing. There is an extant permission for 90 homes, so the principle of residential of this kind of scale, I suppose, is been established. We are obviously seeking, the applicants are seeking 12 additional homes over that permitted level. So there is an increase in density, so I can come on to that in a moment, but in principle, proposals are acceptable in accordance with the plan in terms of where we want to see homes in the local service centre. So turning on to the character, as mentioned, there's an increase in density which takes it up to 27.6 dwellings per hectare. So I mean, it's when we've had a look at that, you know, it's when we've looked at the scheme as a whole, there is an increase. But as mentioned, I think from when we looked through that previous slide of what was previously approved, when we have regard to the scheme overall, there is an increase as proposed. But as previously you can see, quite a dense layout, tend to be larger units with detached, you know, garages. So when we look at the scheme overall, the built form is still considered to be acceptable and not kind of create any kind of built mass over and above what was previously permitted. So when we looked at the character, we talked about the kind of house types. Traditional approach has been taken, which has been welcomed. The applicants have worked with us to kind of improve that through the application process. And what we've been welcomed as well is the kind of attention to the soft landscaping. We can see the amount of trees and the approach here within the site plan. So when we looked at the scheme overall, the proposals are considered to be acceptable in terms of design, appearance, scale, and height. Where we've got that additional height, it does sit within the settlement form closer to the built form here, so the 2.5 stories here and here, which will be adjacent to the allocated site here, which will obviously come forward in the future. But going back to the principle, apologies, we do have to have regard to the site allocation just here, and that does require access to be provided to it through this site, which it has done through the amendments to the scheme here. In terms of amenity, the proposals are considered to be acceptable from an external private amenity space standards and approach for those future occupiers. There's in excess of 50 metres from the nearest properties here down to those on Chapel Street down here. As you'll see, the impacts aren't considered to be harmful. Proposals comply with policy COMO 3 of the local plan. Going back to highways, there's been ongoing discussions with the Highways Authority, and you'll see that following amendments, they've raised no objections to the proposals, subject to conditions. I mean, we note the concerns by the residents in terms of impacts on the A1075 being an important strategic route. However, the key test in planning terms is always significant adverse residual harm, which the proposals would not cause. So the proposals are considered to comply with the policies in the local plan and the MPPF. In terms of, we touched on trees and landscaping, and I mentioned that Lelandai, the section which would be removed, which is shown here. Now, as mentioned, applicants have paid attention to replacement landscaping, significant street trees here and hedgerows. So whilst there is a loss of Lelandai hedge and some mature trees here, overall the proposals are considered to be an enhancement in our own landscape terms and comply with policy COMO ENV 06 of the local plan. So touching on ecology, you'll see the comments from the ecologists raise no objections subject to securing enhancements, mitigations. Those are recommended to be secured by condition. You'll also see from the report that with respect to neutrality, discussions are ongoing. It's been it's with officers to resolve that with Natural England in partnership with the applicants. So the recommendation is seeking officers' authority to continue that and secure the required mitigation in due course. Impacts on the habitat sites within Norfolk for the Norfolk GIRAMs will be secured by the Section 106 agreement. So in overall terms, the proposals are considered to accord with policies ENV 02 and ENV 03 of the local plan. Turning to kind of flood risk and drainage, I've touched on the kind of proposals there. So you'll see from the report that get back to the drainage strategy. There is a surface water flow path that runs through the site. The applicants, through the updated flood risk assessment and drainage strategy, have updated their strategy to take into account of that, create a ditch along the northern boundary, convey that through the internal system to the attenuation features on site. And as mentioned previously, the proposals would discharge to the existing drainage ditch down here at the, to reflect the greenfield runoff rate, so there'd be no worse than the greenfield rate at present. The updated drainage strategy includes SUDS features, so the use of permeable paving within the private drives, rainwater harvesting, etc. So you'll also see that we're awaiting further comments from the lead local flood authority on the surface water drainage strategy. So again, the recommendation is that that's left with officers to resolve, and subject to no objections being raised by the lead local flood authority in that regard. Quickly touching on heritage, the site access sits within the Shipton Conservation Area, which kind of roughly finishes down here. So the site edge red does run through it, but as you note, the access has been provided on site here. Proposals are considered to provide sufficient gap and to the kind of the conservation area boundary here. So the proposals aren't considered to cause harm via the significance and character and setting of the conservation area. And acceptable in that regard. You'll see the heritage officers raise no objections. So kind of finally coming on to kind of the infrastructure, the planning obligations side of things. So you'll see within the report there's been a series of requests. They range from the police authority, NHS, the county council with respect to education and library facilities. You'll see from the representations from the parish council that there's a request for outdoor sport contribution. So you'll also see from the report the applicants have submitted a viability appraisal, which has been reviewed by our independent consultant on our behalf. And when they've looked at the assessment provided by the applicants and undertaken their own scenario testing, they've come to the conclusion that the proposals can't provide the full obligation requirements. As you'll see from the report, those total over £1 million. What the scheme, our consultant does agree with, can provide contributions of up to £583,991, so approximately £584,000. So that is a deficit of approximately 490,000. So there is a significant deficit, and as you'll see from the report, in that regard, when we weigh up the different obligations, we've got education, significant, approximately 750,000. When we've weighed the contribution of education, would in essence prevent any other obligations of mitigation, i.e. outdoor sport, recreation, libraries, etc. You'll see the recommendation from officers is, well, actually, when we look at the contributions from the NHS, the parish council, libraries, we can actually provide all that. We can secure all those. We might not secure the full mitigation requirements for education requested by the county council, but in officers' views, when we prioritise those as set out for healthcare, library contributions, on-site, open space, off-site, outdoor sport and recreation, education, whilst we can secure all those others and only education in part, we feel that's the most sustainable and appropriate approach for this site. So the recommendation is there that through the Section 106 we prioritise in that order, so provide healthcare contributions, library contributions, on-site open space, off-site outdoor sport, recreation and education. So whilst there will be a contribution to education, it's 258,000. It's significantly below the 750 they have requested. So that's a recommendation to the members of the committee. So kind of just to sum up really, as touched on, the site is in accordance with the policies in the local plan in terms of where we need and want to see housing. It does provide 102 affordable homes, so they're split 52 affordable renter to 50 shared ownership. So that's 100% affordable scheme. Other kind of gains are additional 12 houses in terms of the supply and general provision in the district. And as mentioned, we don't feel there's any overriding harm to the character of the village and the surrounding landscape, nor would there be any harm to the conservation area. The proposals provide acceptable levels of amenity and open space on site for the residents. In terms of impacts on ecology, highway safety, and subject to comments from the Flood Authority, it's considered those can be addressed by conditions in the Section 106 agreement. Whilst there is a negative in not providing the full mitigation towards education, it's considered by officers that when we regard to the policies of the plan as a whole and the gains and benefits to the social community, sustainable communities in the village, that 100% affordable housing is a significant gain. So those the benefits from the proposals outweigh any conflict there. And the applicants, what would be secured through the Section 106 is making sure that if that tenure did change, 52 affordable rent to 50 shared ownership, that if that did impact viability, then we could claw back any overage, any additional profit which would go to education. If the change in tenure did improve that viability position. So you'll see from the report, having regard to all those considerations, the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions set out on pages 59 to 67 of the report, and that's with authority being provided to officers to resolve the neutrality issue and ensuring there's no objections from the Flood Authority with respect to surface water drainage. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Jennings, you have 3 minutes, sir. Mr. Jennings is on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of my client, Places for People, in relation to their application for 102 dwellings at Chapel Street, Shipton. The officer's recommendation for approval is welcomed, and their report details how we have worked positively with the council to create a scheme which they can support. The comments of Shipton Parish Council, which you've already heard, in that they have no objection to the increase from 90 to 102 dwellings, and actively support the provision of more affordable and shared ownership dwellings, particularly for local people, is also appreciated. The scheme before you is a 100% affordable scheme, with places for people having a strong track record of delivering such schemes. The proposed 102 affordable homes are NDDS compliant, NDSS compliant. It must also be recognised the site has an extent planning permission for 90 dwellings, and despite the slight increase in the number of dwellings, this application will be providing open space, which is in excess of policy requirements and will include a locally equipped area of play and a community orchard. The plan's comments regarding the increase in dwellings is also important, where it is advised that, whilst the proposals would result in additional dwellings within the permitted site, it is noted that the housing targets set out within policy HOU 01 and HOU 02 are minimum targets only. It is also stated that the additional units proposed also meet the requirements of paragraphs 119 and 124 of the MPPF, which seek to make effective and efficient use of sites in delivering housing, whilst also meeting other environmental and social objectives. The comments of paragraph 1.5 of the report in front of you are particularly poignant in that the proposed dwellings and the extent permission would make effective use of a brownfield site located within the settlement boundary of a local service centre. The site is within a sustainable and accessible location, identified for future growth and previously accepted as appropriate for residential development. Accordingly, the principle of additional residential dwellings proposed on this site is considered acceptable. In reviewing the consultation responses, there are no technical objections to the scheme, which is not unsurprising on the basis that the site already has an extant consent for 90 dwellings. It is also confirmed that the application will not have any adverse impacts on the amenity of existing residents. Despite the very high costs associated with the mitigation of nutrient neutrality, my clients are still committed to providing significant contributions via a Section 106 agreement to help offset the impacts of the development. To conclude, I hope that you are able to support this scheme and allow for this development to be delivered, which will help meet the unquestionable demand for affordable housing and significantly enhance the visual appearance of this brownfield site. Thank you and Merry Christmas.
Thank you. I'm about to hand it over to members, but compliant with MDSS.
National Described Space.
Oh, N. I thought you said M. Sorry, I thought you said M. Sorry.
Tell them what it is.
Oh, go on then.
Oh.
Yeah, you go. National, I know.
Nationally Described Space Standards.
I know you all knew it, but I just want to have it confirmed. I've got Councillor Atwell. Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 points I want to raise. It's just about the business model in terms of the shared ownership. I know other affordable housing providers have really struggled with the shared ownership model because there's very, very limited mortgage products out there. So I'm just wondering whether this is actually achievable in terms of the product and what type of staircasing arrangement there would be for those shared ownership properties, if you could expand on that a bit. And the other question I have for officers is we're best part of £500,000 short on the education contribution. Have we gone back to the County Council and got their views on the impact on the primary school? Because obviously if we've got all these people moving into the village, which is great, I think it's a great scheme, that will have an impact because pretty much the people who are going to move into these properties, I would think, would be families, young families. So there will be a sizable increase in the school. Have the County Council commented on the fact that we can't achieve the full contribution, and has that impact been considered?
Chris, do you want to answer a couple of those? Or do you want to hand it over? No, oh, you.
It's not on. Just in terms of the shared ownership and staircasing, any applicant can staircase from 10% onwards, and they can staircase up to 100%. We model our appraisals to achieve at least 25% of the first staircasing, and on average it's between 30 and 35%, so across the board it stabilises. But we believe that we can achieve to deliver all the 50 shared ownership units, and that the uptake will be on average 30% staircasing in the first tranche.
Okay, there was something else at the end.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, so in terms of impacts on education, yeah, we went back to the County Council to highlight this. I mean, so we have considered it. They're clear in their priority and preference would be that any contributions, do go to education. So, yeah, that's their clear priority as an authority. Yeah, and I think, as mentioned in the presentation, that there is a consideration here. There's the impact on education, where we can't provide the full requirement in terms of mitigation. But when we look at the scheme as a whole, we do have to consider, well, it's viable as it. We have to look at what's viable, and what is before us is a scheme that's viable. Yeah, so just going back to the point, it has been considered. The application is kind of on the basis of the scheme and the mixture of tenure type before committee today. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, Rebecca, can you?
I think the important thing to note is the scheme is only viable to a certain extent, and that, through the viability appraisal, that's given us a monetary value. Now, usually, members, what you're more than often faced with is a reduction in affordable housing to then mitigate that loss, and that obviously that reduction in affordable housing has a cost to us as the local authority. In this instance, obviously, with Places for People being an affordable housing delivery company, and that being their primary objective for this site, another pot has to take that loss, because there is no more money through the viability appraisal to provide all the contributions. So what we've done as officers, in conversation with the County Council, and do they want it done this way? No, they don't. Is it spread out the money in what we consider to be a fair way, which is set out in the officer report, so that there is still provisions, other provisions provided for in a sort of reasonable and fair way. And then the County Council, unfortunately, would have to cover the costs of the loss to mitigate the need. But it is their duty to provide education spaces for all children, and they will have to cover that loss, unfortunately. It's not something we routinely do. Normally we take the loss and the hit as a local authority itself. It's not something that's very palatable, but in this instance there is only, the viability information has shown there is only a certain pot of money. Obviously, members, it's completely within your remit to look at how those funds have been allocated and decide that you feel there is another way of allocating those funds, but that is our recommendation to you, in a fair way, to ensure that amenities are delivered in terms of open space, in terms of the library's contribution, as well as the education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be very pleased to support this application. It's good to see a scheme unusually coming forward with 100% affordable housing, and I hope that other providers may be watching and listening or learning for any other model that you're adopting. In terms of the comments from the housing enabling officer, can you perhaps, either the agent or perhaps Chris can confirm the comments there around the proportions of the 3 and 4 bed homes on site, particularly detached, and how many are proposed in terms of the actual numbers of 3 and 4 beds? I appreciate particularly the comments that Rebecca just made in terms of viability, because obviously if you reduce the number of 3 and 4 beds, that's going to have an impact on the viability and brings us back to where we were with other applications. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Clark. Yeah, so in terms of the mix, did you want to just clarify what the proposed mix for 3 and So, yeah, 102 homes overall, so 32 number 2 beds, 42 3 beds, and 28 number 4 beds.
And that met the housing mix requested by the housing officer, didn't it?
Yeah, so going back to the housing enabler's comments, he was involved through the application process, met with the applicants to discuss the kind of approach to housing mix and tenure. Yeah, hasn't agreed that mix.
Thank you. Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I do note there's a SUDS system being put in place, and condition 7 does say that something about maintenance of that for the lifetime of the development. I just wonder whether who will be, when you do the negotiations with the developer, who will be actually maintaining that system for the lifetime, whether it be a management company or would it be handed over to the LFA to carry out the maintenance, because that's, if a SUDS scheme does come in, like Section 3 of the Flood and Water Management Act, that would automatically revert to the County Council as the local lead flood authority. Is that the case in this case? And just one statement, contributions for education from developments aren't ring-fenced by the County Council. They go into a general pot, so that money from this development would not necessarily go to any school within the Shipman area, but obviously other development money paid to the County Council might come and pay for that one. So just a statement.
Okay.
The applicants know how they're maintaining their SUDS?
Yeah. Do you know the answer to the SUDS question? Yeah. Can you put your mic on, please?
Yeah, we'll have a maintenance company that will maintain all the SUDS.
Okay, that's answered that. Thank you. Councillor Kyburd, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's quite difficult to, from the scale of the drawings, to determine what the parking provisions are.
Do you want me to show the draw to help? There's at least 2 spaces per unit. So, say there's on some of the plots there's 3 spaces. Those larger units. But yeah. Yeah, there's a kind of shared approach to it. So I'll get it up, but. So yeah, you'll see. You'll see a general approach here within the curtilage into the frontage. For instance, we've got 3, a mixture of 3 here. Some of them have just 2. Then there's visitor spaces also, in addition to the plots having parking adjacent to the side here. These shared spaces, and here too. But yeah, we'll see obviously 2 spaces here. So yeah, they're generally in accordance with the requirements in terms of space standards, but there's a mix in terms of approach and number.
I think it was attempted that everyone would have vision of their vehicle as well for security reasons. Councillor Bambridge, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And can I say I think that actually is quite a good development. Well done. I just hope you haven't built a nice oval racetrack round it. So that's just coming, and I've now lost it. I think it's on page 40. I see the flood and water management team, whoever they might be, are concerned about it, and so therefore I'm concerned about it as well, because I spent a good deal of time a few days ago dealing with local flooding in this district, and it struck me that your final ditch, I mean, you mentioned a number of ditches, as did the planning officer, but your final ditch looked very short and very meagre to deal with the amount of runoff there's going to be in a serious storm off a development like that. And so I'm just wondering if flood and water management team are concerned. I should be. And I'm wondering what happens to the water.
So as set out in Chris's presentation, the LLFA initially raised concerns with the scheme that was set out in front of them and have asked for some additional information, which is all to do with the capacity of that SUDS network. The applicants have submitted that information to the LLFA, but unfortunately everyone's gone off on their Christmas hollybobs early, so they were unable to get back to us by committee today. So part of the recommendation of the application is that you delegate the matter of drainage to us as officers, if you're willing, and we would only approve the application on the basis that we have a no objection from them, which deals with the matter of the capacity of the SUDS, which is exactly what you're outlining there. So that was their principal outlining concern. We do have that additional information, but we don't have a response for them today. Obviously, members, if you want to see that information in front of you, then you would need to defer the application today, and we'll bring the item back to Planning Committee for you to consider the whole item again with the SUDS network. Obviously, we're also asking you to delegate the matter of nutrient neutrality to us as officers, but it's completely within your remit not to do that.
Thank you. I am happy to delegate, and I have every confidence in you, but my specific question was about that final ditch. It looked very meagre, I thought, and I'm just wondering, in fact, how big it is and where it actually goes to.
Yeah, do you want me to, I'll get the plan up, Councillor Banbridge, and that'll help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, just zoom in. So, in terms of where it goes to, there's a ditch network running just due southwest of the site. So, it'll be attenuated in this basin here, and there's a connection here in this corner, which will connect into the ditch at this point here. Yeah, and as Rebecca said, in terms of what the process, the applicants have obviously seen the comments of the Lead Local Flood Authority and met with them to discuss their concerns. Then they've, on the basis of that, they've then submitted the revised flood risk assessment and the SUDS strategy. So that, yeah, to address those comments. Just wondering what it was the capacity of the ditch as well, wasn't it?
Well, really,
You're wrong.
Really, it's where the ditch actually goes to. We're talking about a load of houses right within a community. I mean, we had a situation a couple of weeks ago where Attleborough, for instance, had, I think, around 100 houses flooded, which were in a built-up area where houses had been built. And we can take account of this. I mean, there are quite simple processes for dealing with water, which developers don't seem to be doing anywhere. And I'm not being critical of you there, it's a national problem. And we really do need to get hold of it. I'd hate to see our neighbours in Thetford in Shipton rather, being flooded out in a year or two's time because this ditch system was inadequate. And whilst that does look like a reasonably large lagoon, I'm sure it's not actually big enough to deal with a 20 or 30-year storm, much less a 100-year one.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of that, that's what the discussions, that's what the Flood Authority, in terms of their assessments, will take into account in terms of the evidence and demonstration that the measures there would accommodate those impacts from with climate change as well taken into account. So that's fully what the Lead Local Flood Authority will be doing, and be on the basis of their comments back to us.
Thank you. All developers are very naughty, but not you. There we go. Okay, Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Yeah, just a quick one, Mr. Chairman. Going back to what Councillor Clark said about the housing types, because it's full now. You've mentioned all the house sizes, because it says the housing enabling officer said we would be willing to discuss provision of a higher number of 1 and 2 bed homes. As those discussions been had, and what we're seeing in front of us will not alter.
Yeah, no, I think I touched on it before. Those were the comments of the housing enabling officer at the start of the application process, and discussions were had with places for people. Yeah.
Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Can you confirm, or somebody confirm what I heard, or I think I heard, that the attenuation of the SUD system would be equal to the greenfield runoff rate of a bare site? Therefore, if the ditch is doing the job already of greenfield runoff, it should be capable of actually dealing with development through the SUD system.
Yeah, that's correct. Exactly correct.
Chairman, that answer may be correct, but it's not actually a correct answer.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Drainbridge. You're coming back, Councillor Wills.
Yeah, the ditch thing, over the years, we've had that where that ditch is owned by whoever and it's cleaned out, and then further down the line, it's owned by somebody else and it's not been cleaned out, and so the water doesn't flow, then it feeds back and all that sort of stuff. I know that's nothing to do with this development as such, but that's the situation.
Thank you for that. No further questions from members, so I'm going to take the vote on this item. Helps to put my glasses on. So with this application at Shibden 3PL 2022-1046 in a full format, your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? Unanimous. Thank you very much. This item is approved. Okay, we're now going to move to item 9C, 3PL 2023-0668F, and that's at Thetford, Breckland Leisure Centre. And Rebecca is going to do this presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is an application for the refurbishment of an artificial grass pitch, otherwise known as a 3DG pitch, as referred to in the report, with the fencing, some hard standing areas, storage container and replacement floodlights at Thetford Leisure Centre, Breckland Leisure Centre in Thetford on Croxton Road. So here is the application site marked in red for you on the screen in front of you. Importantly, this is the application site that is marked in red for you. So obviously you'll note the blue line which covers the entire site, including the building at the frontage of the site. And when we get to the aerial view, you'll note that there are surrounding grass pitches to the rear. So this application specifically only relates to the red line boundary, which is shown on the screen for you. Why I'm pointing that out is because you'll note from the officer report, from the supplementary, and subsequently since the supplementary was published, we've had 2 more comments. Those representations in the supplementary and the 2 comments we've received recently, plus those noted already in the officer report, all set out concerns about not having access across these green open pitches. Because previously there was an ability to walk across this open site into some of the surrounding development sites in the surrounding area. Not part of this planning application, and you'll see some photos later. The entire area has already been fenced off by the leisure centre. That isn't part of this planning application. Didn't need planning consent because the fencing's below the perimeters. That's because various unsocial behaviours were taking place, access by means other than walking and cycling, people letting their dogs foul on the area and making the pitches unusable for the purpose that they were, i.e. playing sports and recreation. Again, members, I'll remind you that is not for consideration as part of this application. You are only considering the works within the red line. So that's the fenced area, the resurfaced pitch, the hard standing, the container and the floodlights. So through the course of the application, we have negotiated with the applicants. It is their proposals to set out what's referred to in the report as a 3D pitch or an artificial replacement pitch to improve access for local football clubs and use for local football clubs in accordance with the FA League tables. You'll note from the officer report that includes a small storage container. That's just for supplementary storage. and some hard standing areas for viewing around the edging of the pitch. And obviously I've got some photos of that to show you. Also, there will be new floodlighting columns, easy for me to say. Those floodlighting columns are actually slightly shorter than those on site, and they've got better angled lighting and more improved lighting to serve the actual pitch, and therefore reducing any light spill on the surrounding neighbouring properties. However, the fencing that's being erected is actually higher than that already within the application site, and that is to prevent balls, etc., going into people's back gardens, and to ensure that the spec of the new artificial 3G pitch meets that of the required standards for competitive play. So just to show you some images of what you've got on the site. So just to the left-hand side of the screen is your existing. So that's your existing floodlighting columns and fencing. And just on the right-hand side of the site is what the applicant is now proposing. So you can see that's slightly reduced by 2 metres floodlighting and angled specifically at the pitch to improve the wider amenity impact. You can see the increased fencing here. That's for the ball spillage, which I've already mentioned. You can also see behind this element here, hopefully you can see it, is this acoustic fence, which is set out in the report, and I'll come on to that in a minute. And then also just a very modest storage container, which will be supplementing the use of the site. I've just got some images for you just to show what it's like as existing. So here you can see the fencing looking onto the industrial just to the rear there, and the existing grey mesh fencing that exists on the site currently, and the existing pitch surface. And obviously important to note that it's an existing pitch already in use for football and rented out for that purpose at the moment. We're just panning round now, so just panning round the pitch just to show the existing back mesh fencing. Also in this picture, and I have got a better image, you can see the vegetation behind, and there are residential properties behind that. And that is that better image. So it is quite important to note that there is this bank of vegetation on the rear boundary with those properties. And as you can see, it goes up to the eaves of those properties, which you may have noticed from the site plan are relatively close, have relatively small gardens in proximity to the pitches existing. And here you can see where a net has had to be put up to stop those balls from going over into their garden. So the new pitch design should address that matter. And this is just going back towards the leisure centre and just showing the existing pedestrian access into the existing artificial pitch. So just to go through the application, you'll note from the officer report that we've had no objections from the Highways Authority or the Town Council, who support the enhancement of the pitch in this location. You'll also note from the report that Environmental Health had initially objected to the application on the grounds of a noise assessment. That noise assessment was subsequently submitted and assessed through the application process and by Environmental Health. Within that noise report, it proposes the 3-metre acoustic fence, which I showed you the images of. So that will add a 3-metre boundary to that rear boundary adjacent to these residential properties. Oh, sorry, there's a chair in the way. Just here. And that is to protect them from noise. You'll also notice from the officer report the noise management plan, the noise assessment requires a noise management plan, and that's to manage noise and disturbance from the site in terms of shouting, etc. That noise management plan has been put on the application as a condition. So that condition will request that noise management plan to be submitted, which we will consult with Environmental Health. Finally, with regards to noise and disturbance, you'll also note from the officer report, and obviously I'll go into the loss of hockey in a bit more detail, but hockey will no longer be played in this location. You'll note that the noise assessment said that hockey is a noisier sport, and that's specifically with the type of balls hitting the backboards of the surrounding fencing network. They won't be able to play on this pitch going forward, and therefore that's removing a noise generating use. Football is a far less noise generating use. However, that will be managed by the acoustic fencing and the noise management plan. And on that basis, on the basis of those conditions, the Environmental Health team have removed their objection to the scheme. And hopefully, members, you can see there should be a slight improvement to actually surrounding amenity in terms of light overspill and noise and disturbance, because there's no noise and acoustic there at the moment. And again, I'd go back to the point, members, that your application is only for the resurfacing and fencing of this pitch. It's not to consider a new use in this location. The use of this site could intensify at any time, and therefore, in our opinion as officers, there isn't a noise mitigation issue here that would warrant a refusal of planning permission. There is an objection from Sport England on the basis of loss of hockey, and when I go through the principal section, I will go through that. And I've mentioned the objections from the neighbouring properties. So, members, there are a number of policies listed in the report which deal with the application in question. Specifically with regards to the local plan, there's policy COM04, which actually supports the enhancement of community facilities, and this is definitely considered to be an enhancement of what's existing, and like I say, will allow for competitive football in this location. Policy TH8 of the Thetford Area Action Plan seeks to facilitate enhanced health and well-being, and as we know, the use better use of public sports does increase health and well-being. Policy ENV04 is your open space policy, which, as you're aware, prevents the loss of open space. As this is just a replacement pitch surface, this is not considered to be a loss of open space. And there is considered to be community benefit here from the improved facilities, and also this site's in a significantly accessible location where we encourage open space, and those matters are covered in point C of ENV04, but critically in our view this is not a loss of open space and therefore doesn't conflict with policy ENV04. Obviously, members have previously commented, Sport England unfortunately object to the application despite significant work being done with them by officers and the FA to address the concerns that they have with the application. Their concerns are that the proposals don't comply with the playing fields policy or paragraph 99 of the MPPF. The playing fields policy is there to prevent the loss of open space or prejudice the use of open space. And that policy goes on to say, unless the proposals meet one of their 5 exceptions. You'll note from the officer report that, again, we've clearly set out both to Sport England and to yourselves within the report that we don't consider this to be a loss of open space. It's actually an enhancement of open space. And therefore, there's no need to look at the exceptions as set out in the playing fields policy. However, for your benefit, members, we have gone through those exception tests 1 to 5 within the officer report, and we do feel that the proposal would comply with 3 of those exceptions. And just in summary, with regards to point 1, the council doesn't have an up-to-date playing pitch strategy, so it wouldn't comply with that exception. With regard to 2, it would comply with this part of the exceptions, as no structures would obstruct the playing pitch. Obviously, I've mentioned there will be one small storage container used to support the storage of football and use of this site. However, that does not obstruct the use of the pitch and obviously is not of a scale. 3, the pitch size remains as per existing. It is to resurface the existing surface, and the proposals would actually improve the pitch, increase the usage, and the facilities themselves would not be lost in this location, and therefore we think there's overall compliance with exception 3. With exception 4, there is a replacement and a betterment as required by the exception. And with regards to exception 5, there is significant benefit for football, although noting that there will be a loss of hockey in this location. This new 3DG pitch, there isn't one elsewhere in Thetford, so this would be the only one in Thetford, and this is a highly accessible location. Do you want to come in? Oh. Keep going? Yeah. Paragraph 99 of the MPPF requires that any loss of open space will be replaced with a better facility, and we obviously consider this to be a far improved facility, albeit for football, not hockey. There are other guidance notes released by Sport England that we think that the development would comply with. We do accept that hockey would no longer be able to play on this surface in this location when the upgrades are made, or they would no longer be able to play competitive hockey in this location. We have worked hard with the hockey club to find an alternative location for them, and you'll note, as we set out in the officer report, that there is capacity at Watton Hockey Club for the users, so for the amount of competitive hockey that is played in this location, to use their pitch. We've spoken to Watton and they're acceptable that they can timetable the amount of use that's needed in their location. It is accepted that Watton Hockey Club does need some investment in it. However, they have their own commitment programme to improve the hockey pitch in that location. Also, we think it's of merit in terms of consideration of the planning application that the operator could cease use of the site for hockey at any time. There is no requirement for them to allow individual users to use that pitch. We believe that the benefits in terms of the upgrade to the pitch and to allow for the competitive, the FA higher competitive level football outweigh any loss in terms of hockey, and any loss in terms of hockey can be adequately compensated for in Watton, which is also a sustainable location in the district. And like I say, just set out in the report, Sports England guidance also supports improvement of pitches, and we are in accordance with those guidance. Therefore, in summary, we don't consider this to be a loss of open space. It will be an enhancement of a local facility which is available for all, and specifically an enhancement for football. It does not conflict with the Sport England playing pitch strategy in our view, but does comply with the exceptions 2, 4 and 5, and therefore would be acceptable for those reasons. Hockey will be catered for elsewhere, and we do not think it's possible to refuse planning permission for these reasons. You'll note from the officer report that in the event the local planning authority wishes to approve or refuse an application contrary to the Sport England advice, we must first consult with the Secretary of State before issuing any decision on that planning permission. So depending on your decision today, members, in the event we recommend the application for approval, we must first consult with the Secretary of State before any such decision can be issued. That's so the Secretary of State has the ability to call the application in for determination if they so wish. So any recommendation today of approval would be subject to consultation with them. You'll note in the report there was an either-or recommendation in terms of being able to provide the necessary information to deal with their final 3 concerns. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that, and therefore we are recommending approval subject to that consultation with the Secretary of State. I've already set out that we've got no objection in terms of access and car parking in consultation with the Highways Authority, and there is suitable car parking already within the site to cater for the needs of any competitive sport that goes on here. I've shown you the layout of the site, and we've discussed in detail the amenity. So on that basis, we have recommended this one for approval, subject to consultation with the Secretary of State in the event that the members you make that decision today.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's open to question. I've got Councillor Atterwell.
Yeah, one question and a comment. The question is, you showed on the photographs the high netting to stop balls going in the gardens. Is that remaining in place?
No, the netting will go and the new fencing will replace it, which is why it's higher.
Okay. I'll give you 6 months and you'll be back putting the netting up. I guarantee it, because the ball's just going to go sail over this fencing that you're putting up. I can't see that that's an enhancement. And just really a comment. The loss of the hockey, to me, doesn't seem like this is an enhancement of the site. You say we're going to be able to play football on it, which is great, but you can already play football on it, and you can play hockey. You can do both types of sports, which are accessible for people who want to play 2 types of sport. You're now precluding one section of the population of Thetford who want to play hockey, and telling them, get on your bike, mate, you've got to go down to Watton. That don't seem very sustainable to me, so I can't support this. I don't think this is an enhancement.
Okay, well, it's not us. It's not Breckland. It's the applicant putting this forward for the change of this pitch. Well, in totally us, is it? But well, not the planning department. We don't have. Oh, sorry.
So the FA are doing the funding application to do the work, certainly, but obviously we do own that site, and we're working in combination with them, but we wouldn't be paying for it, I think is what Nigel's saying.
Just to clarify, it's us. We own it. That's not the FA funded that, but it's us. It's a Breckland Council application, isn't it?
But it's not me.
Council own the
I'm
site.
not doing it as a councillor. I'm planning, so you're having a go at me, but I'm not. Councillor Harvey, please.
Thank you, Chair. You'll have to forgive me for not having a major trouble with feedback in my hearing aids. I've read it inside my head here. Yet again, I mean, as a newcomer to the planning committee, and I'm not always 100% afraid with the rules, the guarding the fencing round the pitch at the minute is not vandal-proof. We have major ingress, the fence is being cut, we have people using the grass surface without permission, without paying, etc., etc., so the fencing needs to be vandal-proof. The noise, this is totally puzzling me. I was at a football match on Saturday, and I can assure you, football matches are far louder than hockey games. You do not have bad language at hockey games that I've heard. We've had foul and abusive language at the sports centre with the pitches there, so I'm not quite sure where the noise thing comes in. The idea that the ball hitting the backboard of the net is just gaga, because when the ball hits the net at the sports centre now, it's rattling on the fence. There is no difference with the noise, but most importantly, why are we imposing on one of our long-standing, and the clue is in the name, Thetford Hockey Club, the fact they cannot play hockey in Thetford anymore because people with money and the most popular sport are overruling a minority sport, and that is totally out of order. The clue is in the name, sport for all, and it should be sport for all. In the last 12, 20 years in Thetford, we have lost 11 football pitches, 3 tennis courts, bowls greens, etc., etc. What's next? Are we just going to be a football town? No, it's not right. Sport should be for all. Minorities made to support everybody. And I will not vote for this. I'm really sorry.
Did you want to come on there? Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yeah, I've got Councillor Kittle-Morris, then Councillor Clark.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have to say that I've done many trips to this hockey pitch when my daughter was between 9 and 18, watching her play hockey on that particular pitch. Why is this not suitable for hockey? Is there a change in the surface? Because AstroTurf is normally the vehicle on which hockey is played, either sand-based or water-based. What is this particular make-up of pitch? What is excluding hockey from this particular pitch?
Yeah, so the England Hockey Association say that 3G surfaces are designed primarily for football and rugby, and hockey does not consider this suitable for competitive hockey. And it's all to do with the pile, so like a carpet pile, as 3G is 60 mil, and it impacts the run of the ball for hockey. And the pile and the rubber crumb would slow the ball down. I'm reading it, obviously.
Thank you for that answer. That's really what I'm saying. But why have they not considered putting AstroTurf down? Because you can play football on AstroTurf with the right shoes on.
So the 3G pitch is specifically for the competitive football. So that's the pitch that they need to play on at their level to increase the level of football that is played in that location. But that, unfortunately, isn't suitable for the hockey. But the hockey, there is capacity at Watton for them to play at their sports pitch. And members, I would remind you that the use of hockey on this pitch is totally within the gift of the running of the leisure centre. There is no requirement for them to allow that club to, the hockey club don't own this location. There is no requirement for them to use that location. And with regards to noise, apologies, I should have said this after you spoke, was that the intensification of that pitch could happen at any time. This is an existing football and hockey pitch which people use on a regular basis. Therefore, there is a noise level of disturbance there. And through the implementation of this permission, there would be an acoustic fence and a noise management plan that doesn't exist currently. And therefore, there is a means to manage noise, which isn't there currently. So the baseline isn't, again, I go back to the point, it's not a new facility in this location, it's an existing facility. So the baseline isn't a change of use of land to a football pitch. The baseline is it's already a football pitch. So there is already a noise impact in that location, which will be better managed through a noise management strategy and hours condition and acoustic fence, which doesn't exist currently.
Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Rebecca. You've partly answered my questions, partly been raised by Councillor Kittle-Morris, and it seems the difference, which seems to be excluding the hockey club, is that if there's going to be competitive level sport played, that requires a different surface, and that may apply both to hockey as a sport and football. As you can tell from my slimline svelte structure, I'm a keen sporting person, Olympic standards. Many years ago. Dereham luckily does have its own hockey club and its own ground. So the question I want to ask is, obviously, whilst they don't own the ground, presumably, obviously it's been used for football and hockey up until now. Can you tell us, although I've seen the report in where you reference to options being taken up by one of the clubs at Watton, what's the geographical distance between Thetford and Watton approximately?
I actually have got Councillor Kybird on now. Thank you.
So thank you, Chairman. My understanding from over the last couple of years is that the existing AstroTurf is nearing the end of its useful life, and if it's not replaced, neither football nor hockey will be played. So we're between a bit of a rock and a hard place there. And the other point I would like to make is that within the overall master plan for the urban extension, there is considerable additional sports facility to be provided at different stages of development. So there remains an opportunity to bring hockey back to Thetford at the appropriate level of expansion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Plummer. Oh, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I ask the case officer, has the hockey club been consulted? Would they be happy to move to Watton? Just a simple question, really, on that one.
The hockey club have been spoken to in detail. There is capacity at Watton and they are happy to pay there in the interim. They would like a long-term solution and that's closer back to Thetford, and Councillor Kybird is absolutely right that we are looking at opportunities in Thetford to bring the hockey club back to Thetford at a later date. They would prefer their own facility, so it would be wrong of me to say that they're happy to go over to Watton. They would prefer their own facility at Thetford that is moved to them, but we definitely have had conversations with them. There is capacity and they are willing to move over to Watton. The council will continue to look at alternative opportunities with providers in the local area to support that move back to Thetford, but we won't be funding any move back to Thetford.
Councillor Harvey, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just one comment on the competitive football bit. Under FA rules, certain clubs below certain standards are not allowed to use 3G pitches. That is why people like Thetford Town, etc., haven't gone that way. The level, I was at a game on Saturday at level 4, they're allowed things, one below that. Some at the minute aren't allowed to use 3G pitches. So the competitive football theory doesn't really kick in unless it's five-a-side competitions, which are different. So, I mean, I'm quite convinced the FA will not allow clubs below a certain level to play on 3G pitches. But I will check that.
I think it's the all-weather surface that they can play football all round the year for those teams that can play at a competitive level. And like I say, the FA are driving the project. They're getting the funding for it. So I'm sure they're aware of how they can use that space. But I think it's more the all-weather surface that they're looking for, so you can have football all year round.
Okay, just going to have a discussion between the solicitor and the chief planning officer. Just give me a moment. And after that, I've got Councillor Bambridge to speak. Just let them have a minute of consultation. As they say, talk among yourselves, but I prefer you not to.
Yeah.
It's good for you, Councillor Harvey, because no one's talking on a microphone at the moment, so you're not being in. Right.
Can I say something?
Oh yes, please. Then I'll take Councillor Bambridge.
Members, this is an interesting one. I'm going to have to introduce some semantics, if I may. Per se, the issue as to what happens to the hockey club is not a planning consideration. That's the starting point. However, it is absolutely true to say that when you are considering Councillor Attewell's enhancement point, then I would absolutely agree that it is perfectly acceptable for you to consider, as a planning reason, whether if a sport is included, that is or is not an enhancement. So I therefore agree with Councillor Attewell on that point. So if you were to say, very hypothetically, we wish to refuse this because the hockey club can't play there, that would be an incorrect planning decision. But I accept completely the fact that it would be reasonable for you to say, we do not consider it an enhancement and therefore the policy is breached. But if I ask you to cast your mind back to the first application that we had on something completely different, and that was the affordable 40%, 25% housing provision. There it was stated that if we refused it then, which we didn't, a planning application could be made now, and it would be granted with a 25%. So, you know, really you felt you had your hands tied behind your back on that, and that's why you resolved as you did. Here, don't forget, in an analogous situation on a different subject, that as you have heard, it is the hockey club play there by licence. That can be terminated at any time. Therefore, if you were to refuse this application on the basis that it's not an enhancement, all that presumably, well, I'm not going to say would happen, but it certainly could happen, is that the hockey club's licence to play there is terminated, the application comes back, and then undoubtedly it is an enhancement. Pretty analogous.
Can I just go back to the Sport England bit? Taking on board what the solicitor has said, I think I'm right in saying that you've said that Sport England do not agree with this application because we can't meet all their tests because they don't consider this as an enhancement. Is that correct?
No, what Sport England are saying is the loss of hockey, it doesn't meet their playing pitch strategy because the loss of, by this new surface, it's prejudicing use of the site by Sport England, and it is their opinion, prejudicing use of the site by hockey, apologies, and therefore you would need to then move to the exceptions, which they haven't considered because they don't agree that our stance that there isn't actually a loss of open space here.
So Sport England are saying that this isn't an enhancement because we're prejudicing one section of the population that want to play hockey. You did use that word.
That's what their policy says. So let's go back to planning. So Sport England aren't required to determine an application in accordance with planning policies. They are required, as your consultee, to give you their opinion on where an application sits. It is your role and my role to determine the application in accordance with planning policy. So the planning policies are one, which was Commo 4, which, you know, like we've said, is that an enhancement of a community facility? Yes or no? And 2, EMVO4, is it a loss of open space? Well, it's obviously not a loss of open space. So the question is whether it's an enhancement. You then move on to your other material considerations, of which the Sport England comments are an other material consideration. So it'd be wrong for the starting point to say that they were determining the application, in my view. Their starting point is, well, what are you going to do about hockey? Because they are a statutory consultee in that regard. They don't have to consider all the other elements. They're only considering their one element.
So it's not an enhancement. Sport England are saying it's not an enhancement. Yes, I hear what you're saying about the loss of open space. So you could argue, is it open space when it's fenced in? Technicality. But if we were minded to do so as a committee, we could take the view that we don't consider this as an enhancement and that we want the applicant to go away and think about it again to make the application more inclusive for the population of sport people in Thetford. Would I be correct in saying that?
So you absolutely can make the assessment that you don't consider this to be an enhancement. I think what you can't do is then go on and say you've got to go away and consider a more inclusive proposal for other sports, because as we've rightly set out, there is no requirement to allow different sports to play on this existing pitch.
Okay, but by virtue of the fact that we potentially refuse it because we don't consider this an enhancement, we're in effect saying to the applicant, go away and think again, aren't we? We don't have to put it in writing, but we're technically saying we're not happy with this. We think you need to give this some more thought. That's the inference by refusing the application, isn't it?
Asking me the question, because no, I think the refusal of planning permission is a refusal of planning permission. What then happens after that is outside of our remit.
And just to be clear, the site is operated by Parkwood Leisure, is that correct? Who work for us as a district council?
Contract. They're contracted by us, but they're an independent company, yeah.
And that was what I was trying to say earlier, is don't ever look at me, because I don't know the first thing about football or hockey, that it's Parkwood Leisure that are doing the application. Sorry.
I absolutely understand the direction of your logic, and I agree with it. On the other hand, to be fair, whilst what you're saying I think is perfectly logical, it is also worth noting that in considering whether this is an enhancement, you should probably also bear in mind that, as has been stated, I think, by Councillor Guybert, that this pitch it needs renovation. It's not in the best of state, and it is relevant that there is a Football Foundation grant for this renovation that might not be there if a planning permission is not given, and so I need to be very careful here. So I am not I am not suggesting that that is a reason to give planning permission when, for planning reasons, you think permission shouldn't be given. But it is, I think, fair to say that that goes into the general melting pot of what you think is an enhancement.
Councillor Attwell again. Let me just take Councillor Attwell because we're bouncing that, and I'll come back to you.
Well, I mean, he has had...
Okay, fair enough, coming from you. Right, Councillor Bambridge, then I'll come back to you, Councillor Attwell. Councillor Bambridge.
I think, Chairman, we have to discuss this on the planning issues. I mean, I know, and perhaps not all council have been involved, but I'm sure many have, the matter of this pitch has been discussed within this council for a long while, certainly well over a year, and certainly from well over the time it's been in a planning application. And the whole issue of hockey and football and where they play has been discussed, and long discussions have been taken. And I've spoken to a number of hockey player members. I'm not particularly sporty either. I've gone past that. But we have discussed that. My understanding is there is, in fact, a hockey pitch at the grammar school which can be used by the youth team, or am I incorrect in that? My understanding is that that was an arrangement that was made, and the arrangement has been made, I know, by discussing with the hockey club, because I've spoken to individual members, about playing at Watton. So we're not disposing of another club. Ideally, of course, we'd like another pitch in Thetford. That would be the perfect solution. But that's not there now. I think we have to discuss this and decide it slowly on the planning matters that are before us. Other issues have been discussed in other departments of this council over a long period of time. Some of those meetings I've sat in.
Mr. Horn.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, you are quite right. We need to consider the planning merits of this application, the planning merits only. Therefore, the fact that it has been discussed elsewhere in the council is irrelevant. We are here to discuss the planning merits. And the very finely balanced issue here is whether, taking everything into consideration that you're entitled to take into consideration, you consider that this is an enhancement. And that is the point that Councillor Attwell has made, and it is for you to decide that.
Councillor Attwell.
And thank you for that. And just to clarify, that the solicitor has mentioned the fact that there is a grant for this possible work. That is not a planning consideration, and is not something that we should take into account how the thing is financed. We wouldn't take account any other application how it's financed. So therefore, it is on plan merit, and it comes down to whether we consider us an enhancement or not, as I say it.
Mr. Horn.
I do take that point, and I understand why you're making it, but it does go to the point as to the state of the pitch at the moment, and whether there is any reasonable likelihood that the condition of it, when it is presently suboptimum, is going in the reasonably foreseeable future to be improved. I do understand your point, however. It's a very fair point, and that is finely balanced, and I think you're substantially correct that funding is not really an issue per se, but I think that it is fair to say that it does go to the point of the condition of the pitch, the reasonable foreseeableness or otherwise of whether that is going to be improved, and therefore the enhancement issue.
Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, in my opinion, we are enhancing this because if you listen to the officer's report at the beginning, there was dog fouling across the pitch, there was trespass on the pitch, the fencing is not adequate, the lighting is not adequate, and if it wasn't replaced with dogs walking on there all the time, then you would lose that facility. So it's enhancing the facility, and funding links in with that, with the development as well, because all sports facilities across the country do need that funding, and especially from the FA. It's happened in villages where I work. We need to get funding from the FA to enhance the facilities they already have.
Okay. Councillor Plummer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's two quotes here. Not to cut your nose off to spite your face, so we don't let the football have their way. And a bird in the hand's worth two in the bush, which if we got this going ahead, then we should vote to put it. I agree with Councillor Atwell and the gentleman that yes, we're at the moment penalising the hockey club, but if they're willing to go to Watton until there is a facility at Thetford, a good facility, up to date, super facility for them, that's only a piecemeal thing till that is built. But what we don't want to do is then say, oh no, we don't want this football, and then everybody suffers. If we do it right, nobody suffers. Everybody in time gets what they need.
Okay, thank you. I think everyone's had a good time. I have a question. I'm going to put it to the vote. With regards to this item at Thetford, 3PL 2023-0668/F, full application. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? I understand. 8. There was against. 2. Okay. Thank you. But I think a voice has gone from this committee. Even like I say, people who voted are reluctant, but are trying to see a way forward. And I appreciate everyone's concern. We're now going to do item 9D, 3PL 2023-0914. This is a variation at Attleborough, please. We've got Barbara who's going to sit in and do this one.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So, members, this site is being brought to Planning Committee because the applicant is a ward councillor. And the site is in Attleborough, Cakes Hill Barn on Ellingham Road. It's a dwelling north of Attleborough. It's just off the B1077, which runs between Great Ellingham and Attleborough. There's the site in relation to Attleborough settlement. And this is a picture of the dwelling in question. So the application seeks to remove an agricultural occupancy condition attached to this dwelling. So this dwelling was permitted in 2016 on the basis that it was in relation to an agricultural business on this holding and an AD plant. And it was approved subject to the restriction, meaning that only an agricultural worker could live in the property. So the applicant now seeks to have that condition removed. So this falls to be considered under policy, as you've seen in my report, policy high 13 of the local plan. And that's got 2 requirements. The first is you need to demonstrate that there's no longer a need for the accommodation on the holding and in the local area, and that the property has been marketed for a reasonable period, at least 1 year, at a price which does reflect the existence of the occupancy condition. And it does then say the applicant will be required to submit independent valuation to justify the marketing price. So firstly, there certainly is no longer a agricultural business at the holding. So that's accepted. The business has now ceased, and the agent on behalf of the applicant has also advertised the property for purchase within the local area with the restriction in place, and has undertaken direct marketing to a list of some 37 agricultural businesses in the area. So this marketing did not result in any uptake. So that covers the first element of the policy. Secondly, it must be marketed for at least a year at a price which reflects the existence of the occupancy condition. Now, Acora's Rural Property Services have marketed the property in line with the policy requirements of at least 1 year. So it was advertised from July 22 till July 23. And obviously, it's important to know that the marketing price was reflective of the occupancy condition. So they have submitted documentation to prove that they obtained 3 independent market valuations to ascertain an appropriate price to market the property, which would reflect the condition. And these 3 valuations were shown to have taken place in January 22, May 22 and November 22. And these proposed a value of around 25% below normal market value to reflect the restriction. And you can see the prices as set out in the report. Copies of the advertisement were provided by the applicant to show the property being marketed and the recommended price, and the adverts, whilst being placed on the website of the estate agent Acora's property, were also placed in 3 newspapers. All the forms of marketing resulted in 5 parties showing an interest, but none of those led to any viewings or uptake of the property. So we consider that the requirements of the policy have been met and acceptable marketing has taken place. So we are recommending that the condition can be removed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. It's open to questions from members. No. Okay, thank you. So with regards to Attleborough 3PL 2023-0914, as a variation, your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? And against the application? 1. Okay, thank you. This item is approved. Okay, item 10 on the agenda for today, applications obviously determined by the Deputy Chief Executive. Those are there for your information. And also for your information on item 11, appeal summary. And with that, I close this meeting and wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Councillor Plummer, on the camera or off the camera? Off camera? Okay, thanks. We'll stop the recording.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to thank No, I'm not going to.